patients, we are having some heating issues here at the museum, and we tried our best to get or Wayne tried his best to get the auditorium heated up for us today, but just with the temperatures that we're currently experiencing, it was very difficult. So we felt like it would be much more cozier here in the classroom. But we would like to welcome you to our first History for Lunch for January of 2025. We're grateful that you all are here, ready to support us for another year of the educational programming. Just as a reminder, on Wednesday, January the 15th, we'll have Mr. Derek Brown, and he is the site manager of Bentonville Battlefield State Historic Site, and he will discuss the history and preservation of North Carolina's largest Civil War battlefield. And Mr. Brown is also the co-author of a new photo history of the site. And the book is located in the museum shop if you are interested in taking a look at that. We have added an extra history for lunch for Wednesday, January the 29th. And we're going to have Mr. Reverend Daniel M. Sensei of Christ Episcopal Church here. And his talk will be Kings, Colonists, and Christ Church, the lasting legacy of the Church of England in Pasquotank County. So that talk will be based upon the archaeological finds that they found on the property of the Christ Episcopal Church back this summer that when they were removing a tree for a playground. So that's what the talk will focus around for on Wednesday, January the 29th. Also, too, on Friday evening, January the 17th, we are going to have our last tribute to Max Roach, who was a very well-known jazz musician from Pasquotank County. This year, we're going to welcome back Mr. Thomas Taylor, who is a jazz percussion professor at North Carolina Central University, and Mr. David Albert. So they'll kind of be battling it out on the drums. Mr. Albert was a high school band director here. He studied under Mr. Calloway at Northeastern High School, and then they will have additional guest musicians with them that evening. It is free to the public. It will start at 6 p.m. So we have a full slate for the month of January. Also, too, we do have a program calendar that's at the front desk. So if you would like to pick that program calendar up, please be more than welcome to take one or two and share with your friends. But today, we're all here. I should have not. This morning we debated on whether to have the talk in the auditorium or in the classroom, and we just decided to go with the classroom. But I should have known that we would have had a full house today. But anyway, because of Mr. Fearing.
Now they're here to critique me. That's what it is.
We do welcome Mr. Fearing on part 2 of his historical pictures of Elizabeth City, and we have already talked. So we're going to look at this summer of doing the Max Head photos. Yep. So we'll go ahead and get Mr. Fearing on the schedule for this summer. But again, thank you, Mr. Fearing, and thank you all for understanding what we are going through right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fearing.
Okay. Yeah, you turn the lights off. Oh, we're in the dark. That's even better. Good. No, I wanted to. Can you see in the back at least the screen? Not too good. Okay. Well, we'll do better shots. This is an overhead shot, so it's kind of old and fuzzy, but we'll get into better stuff that you can see. Anyway, this is like, I feel like I'm back teaching school, but y'all are a little older than my 5th graders that I taught. So just a little. All right, let's start with a picture of overhead Elizabeth City. I always like to start with an overhead so we got to figure out where we are. And at this point, we are right where this cursor is. And that was the old Coca-Cola bottling company that was on the corner of Water Street and Ehringhaus Street, and it's now the lot where the museum is. So let's follow Charles Creek all the way across here. This is Riverside. Here's the shipyard. And if we notice down here in the forefront, it's fields. These were known as the Cabbage Patch area. And if anybody's ever lived over in Tuscarora, Honeycutt, Jones, Wareham, any of those streets, that's the Cabbage Patch. That was my great-grandfather's farm, And after World War II, when all the new brides and grooms from the war were moving back, they had nowhere to live. So they made an effort to build houses over there on that farm. And some of them were built, they cut the cabbage and built the house right over top of the cabbage ruts. As a matter of fact, when I was first married, I owned a house on Honeycutt, and the guy went under it to work on the heat one day because I had radiator heat. And he said, I've never been under a house like this before. There's like grooves in the ground. And I said, yeah, it was cabbage patch. That's what it was called, and that's what it was from. Let me find the light so I can see the cursor. I can't change the. All right, now I know where I'm going. Okay, this is a downtown shot overhead, same time period. Let me orient you to where we are. This is Main Street right here, going down. There is the center, the AOA and the Kramer building there. There's the Carolina building we talked about last time that burned. Here is the water. This is where the park is now. Texaco Company, owned by Miles Clark, was here at the foot of Fearing Street. Robinson building over here. So all this is now park. But this was an overhead. So you see there were a lot of buildings in downtown Elizabeth City and a lot of industry at the time. Here's a bigger overhead shot. Now, what I like to show about this is all these things down here that look like mobile homes. This is actually another result of World War II. These were housing units that were put on Eringhouse Street, the Catalina Avenue, all that area. They were cinder block housing developments that had 2 to 4 units with 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in it. And they lasted until the 1960s. I think there may be 2 left over there that are remodeled beyond description. But that, you can see how big and spread out Elizabeth City was at that point. And this is taken about 1950. Here's the original bridge to Camden County. There's Continental Green back here in the back that's now condos and all kinds of stuff. This is what was left of the train yard. When, remember, I told you the last time, if you were here, that the train came down the tracks, backed in, pulled in here, and had to back out. So they stopped passenger service there. But this is the original bridge that went to Camden. Texaco tanks down here at the bottom, which the platforms are still there over on the Camden side. This is a hard picture to see, and I couldn't get it any bigger or any brighter, but this picture was taken about 1890, and this is the intersection of Main and Poindexter Street. This building over here on the left is now AOA. It was Mitchell's Beehive department store. And over here on the corner, which is now where Harbor Pharmacy was, but is not any longer, things changed really quickly, was also a pharmacy, drugstore. But you can't see in this picture very clearly, and I couldn't get it any better, but the streets are actually dirt at this point. This is the Lee House, which is the first hotel in Elizabeth City, built on the corner of Main and Road Street. It was a wooden structure, and there's been a hotel occupying that site since this was built in 1858. It was a wooden structure. It burned, and once it burned, they replaced it with this brick structure. This is still, that's the Southern Hotel, and it caught fire yet again when it was in this state, and they remodeled it into what it is now, which is basically a hotel that's not used. This is the groundwork for the post office and federal building on Main Street, taken 1905, July 28, 1905. They were laying the foundation for the basement. You'll notice the houses across the street, most of them are no longer there. Here it is again with the foundation being laid. The picture is actually reversed. The courthouse should be on the left-hand side, but you get an idea of what it was. The house in the back is the small house, which was behind where the courthouse is now. And this picture would be in reverse, but that was destroyed, as we talked about in the last. Oh, let's see. I got to hit the right one. Here's the inside of the federal building courthouse as it was being constructed. All of the woodwork was mahogany, and all of the decorative work was plaster and carved marble. Some of it is still visible today. It's been through several renovations, and this is all gone. This is all gone. But a lot of the original woodwork in some of the offices and in some of the courtrooms is still original. And there it is, completed. Another picture that's really hard to see, but this is another 1890 photo. And this shows, this is Main Street here looking west. There again, this is the AOA building, and you'll notice there's nothing beside it at all. Where the Kramer building is, it's not there anymore. Look at this is a telephone line. That's not electricity, that was phone lines. The building on the left is what was McCabe and Grice. The building is still there, and there is a gymnasium in it and condos. There again, bricks, not brick streets, but dirt. Here's a better picture of it. Same time frame. Notice there's no automobiles, there's just buggies. Horse and buggies. All right, this one of my favorite pictures is this is the corner of Martin Luther King and Main Street. The house on the left is where the police station is now, for those of you who are trying to get a feel for where it is. These three houses were built by the Kramer brothers. The Kramer brothers owned and operated one of the largest lumber mills here in Elizabeth City. And they competed with each other in most everything. In fact, they competed with each other in building houses. These houses were all George Barber designed houses. George Barber was an architect from Tennessee who was very prolific in Victorian architecture. The house here, which was the largest, was Joseph Kramer's house, and it was the last one to remain standing. And it was torn down in the 50s, in the late 50s. And the wood from that house was used to build a house on Griffin Street, right about middle of the block between Church Street and Ehringhaus Street. It sits on the right-hand side, and it's very unrecognizable from what this is because it was built in a whole different style. But this house had 15 rooms in it to give you some idea how big the house was. There again, dirt streets. This is another view of those three houses. There's the first one, the second one, and the third one, which is the largest. When I got this photograph, I kept looking at it and I couldn't figure out what in the world this house was back here. And I'll show it. I think there's a slide here as I zoomed in, but you see there's a turret and a spire here, and nowhere on any map could I find this house. And then I finally figured out, after talking to Charles Gordon, who's a lot older than I am, no longer with us, but was a very good historian. He said it was Governor Ehringhaus's home. And Governor Ehringhaus was governor in North Carolina in the 30s, I believe. See, there it is right there. I zoomed in on it. You can see the Victorian turret and spire. And this is the Kramer house that was on the corner of Martin Luther King and Main Street. This is Main Street coming down here. Cursors. There we go. Main Street again, looking west. This is from Dyer Street, First Baptist Church on the right-hand side. All these houses, for the most part, are still intact and still there. This one right here is no longer there. That was the Baptist Church parsonage, and it was torn down in the 80s. All the elm trees down Main Street died from the blight, but at one time it was said that it was just like going through a canopied walkway to go down Main Street. This is Dr. Blade's house. The house is no longer standing. It's the corner of Main and Poole Street. It's Poole Street. No, it's Martin Street. Excuse me. Main and Martin Street. House was built for Dr. Blades, who actually started the telephone company. Now, the strange thing is this little building right here was the telephone company. This is the corner of the Robinson house front yard, and that was his phone company. And I think there were only five, if I'm correct, 5 phones in Elizabeth City when he started the company. This house burned, not completely, but they had a major fire in it in probably 1915, and it was remodeled. And now one of the things you can tell from the remodeling is this doorway has been changed and these dormers have been changed. These two are missing. So let's see if I've got that picture. Well, I'm hitting the wrong thing. I can't see. Turn the lights on. Hold on. This is Braille system. All right. All right. Somebody give me some technical advice. If it doesn't have a crank on it, I can't operate it. Where's my help? Good luck. I don't know how it zoomed in. Right. And then, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, here's another picture of it before the fire, and you see the two dormers on either side of the big ones. Notice this big house beside it. And as we go along further, I'm going to show you what happens to things over time and where they're just remodeled to the point that you don't even recognize them. That house, let's see if I've got smart enough to zoom in. Oh, I have. All right, that house was Dr. Combs' house. And Dr. Combs was a prominent physician in Elizabeth City at the turn of the century. And he built a large Victorian house right beside Dr. Blade's house. And it was also destroyed about the same time that Dr. Blade's house was torn down. They tore it. All these were torn down for the parking lot that's there now for the courthouse. Okay, this is, let's see if I can zoom. Aha, I've learned something. Now I hit something I wasn't supposed to. Hold on. Cancel, yes. All right. This is what Dr. Combs' house ended up looking like. No rhyme or reason to what it had been. It was cut up into 8 apartments, and these were done after World War II when all the servicemen came back and there was nowhere for them to go. When the county tore down the houses, the man who was running the demolition was a good friend of mine, and I've always been a pack rat and a collector and an antique dealer and everything else. And he said, if there's anything in these houses you want, go get them before I bulldoze them. Well, I looked at this one and I thought, well, there's nothing in this house worth anything until I walked in the door, and it was like going in King Tut's tomb. There were Tiffany windows. There was carved spandrel work, marble mantels. The stairway was an Egyptian panel stairway with carved camels and pyramids and all this stuff up the stair. It was unbelievable. And the stuff that came out, it was just phenomenal. But there again, that's what happens to all these older houses. And there again that's another photograph of it. So you can see it had been remodeled beyond what it was originally. There again, another photo. The building on the corner is the Clough Pool, which is being remodeled at this point. So this gives you some idea of where this house was. And we're going back to Dr. Blade's house. And you notice this is after the fire. The 2 dormer windows at the top are missing. And the front door, and I don't know if I can zoom this in enough for you to see it. The front door now is an arched leaded glass fan light and side light doorway. When this house was torn down, I took that doorway out of the front, and I had a friend who had a Zuzu pickup truck, which was not very big, and we put it in the back of the truck, and the front wheels came off the ground. So I had to sit on the front of the truck as a hood ornament so the wheels would go back down to take it around the corner to the storage place. But I wasn't going to let it be destroyed. There it is again after the remodeling or remodeling. And notice again over here, the Robinson house is still not built. This is where there's a picture of it from the rear. So they were sizable houses. The one across the street is still there. That was the Derrickson Hollow house that Maxine Sweeney lived in. It's still there. But all this now is parking lot. Upstairs in the Blades house, there was a ballroom and a billiards room. If you'll notice around the ceiling are hand-painted scenes. Dr. Blades hired an itinerant Italian artist when he remodeled a house to come and paint scenes in the ceiling of the ballroom and the billiard room. I can only imagine taking that monstrous table down 3 flights of steps to get it out of there. Yeah. This is one of the bedrooms. You'll notice all the woodwork, the mantle. the shower light fixtures, and all the furniture in every room was designed to match the room. The living room and parlor of Dr. Blade's house. There again, notice the ceiling and the frieze around the room were all hand painted by the artist who did the ceiling in the upstairs ballroom. And all this was destroyed. Now, the front hall with the newel post, the glare on the left is the bay window that looked out on the side. Front hall again, and there's that front door that I salvaged. And when I built my house in the country, I incorporated this door in the front of it, and I had to make the ceilings 11 foot high in the house to get the doorway in there, because that's how big it was. There's a backside view of the house. And another picture of the back. And this is what happened. It was bulldozed. That's a shame. Who bulldozed it? The county bulldozed it. Raleigh Carver, who was the county commissioner at the time, had bought this house, Dr. Combs' house, and the small house, and decided that they needed them for parking lots. And we started a group of people. We got together to save these, and within the 11th hour, we had Raleigh on board to save them, and he bulldozed them on a Saturday, so we couldn't do anything about it. He told the man who was tearing them down, make sure they were destroyed enough that they couldn't be saved. There it is, being torn down. It actually had been social services for the county. It was a social services house for a long time. And I guess like when they tore the library down, they needed bigger space and more modern space. I will tell you, this is Melvin Owens on the bulldozer, and Melvin broke 4 2-inch cables trying to tear this house down. That's how solidly it was constructed. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, gas stations were owned by companies like Texaco and Gulf and Pure Oil. And in order to distinguish themselves from each other, they designed gas stations to look like different things. The Pure Oil station, which one of the few of them left down here on the corner, which is now the Kraken, always had a blue glazed tile roof. They had several different designs in that Pure Oil station, but you could see it coming. You could see that blue roof, and you knew that that was where you could stop and get gas. This is on the corner of Main and Road Street. This is where Everett Thompson's office is now, and Miles Clark built this, and it was called the Mount Vernon Filling Station. I remembered as a child because it was fun to ride under the column. You thought you were driving across somebody's porch to get gas. It originally had a bracketed pediment across the top that looked like railing across the porch, but of course it rotted and fell in. And here's the garage on it where they worked on cars. But this was the Mount Vernon Filling Station. Let's see if I can zoom in a little more so you can get a detail of the front. I've learned a new trick. To see they had the gas pumps between all of the columns. And then when they tore it down, they put another gas station there, and it was a spur station, but it was nowhere near as cool as this one. Across the street was a Gulf station. This is where Muddy's is now. There was a Gulf station or a gas station on that property for many years. It was the Idlet house originally, and the house was huge and built right to the sidewalk, and it didn't last but about 30 years, and they tore it down, and they put a Gulf station, which is this one, in the 20s. And then this was torn down, and they put another one that I think was a Sinclair. I can't remember exactly, but the building is still there, and it's now Muddy's Coffee Shop. This is one of the Kramer houses. This is the corner of Main, and this is Pool Street right here, where Pool Street Park is, that we are redoing as part of Elizabeth City Downtown Incorporated. These houses were wonderful. Second Empire, stick style houses, balusters, turrets, balconies, all kinds of really neat stuff. There again, horse and buggies, very few cars. This is Mr. J.B. Flora's home, which was a huge brick house on the corner of Main and McMorran Street. Mr. Flora was the mayor here for many years, and the house stayed until probably the 1940s, and it was torn down to build Belt Tyler Building, which is also no longer there. The building that's there now is Nesselrod. This was my great aunt Hazel Pendleton's house. It's still there on Main Street. When she got married at 18 and her husband was 50. Yeah. But he lived to have 4 children and see them all grown, educated, and married. He owned Standard Drug Company. And when they got married, they bought the house that was here on this property in 1911. The house was identical to one that's on the corner of Church and Selden Street that's still there. And he hired an architectural firm in Norfolk to reconstruct this in a Beaux-Arts Second Empire style French mansard house, which is a mouthful, but that's what he wanted. Aunt Hazel died in the 80s, I think 85 or 87, and the house was sold. It's been through all kinds of bad times and good times. It's now owned by Denise Marion, who has started to restore it, put a new roof on it, and has done a lot of work on it. This is one good thing about the remaining houses in Elizabeth City is people love them, and they are taking a second look at them and redoing them, which helps us in our historical aspect. Let's see if I can get this thing down. There we go. All right. This house, for you Episcopalians in here, is the old parsonage where the parish house is beside the Episcopal Church. When the parish house was built in the either 20s or 30s, I can't remember which, this house was cut in half right in the middle where you see that dormer window, and moved across the street where St. Philip's is in St. Philip's parking lot, and used as a rental house for many years until it was torn down for parking. Dr. Speed's house. This was on Speed Street. House was a very unusual Italianate home that was completely an unrestored historic house. It was the Elizabeth City Historic Neighborhood Association had it saved. They got it from the property owners, had it put on a dolly, moved around the corner to find somewhere to house it, and somebody set fire to it on the truck and burned it to the ground. It was very unusual. The state of North Carolina said that they'd never seen a house that had shuttered windows that were Palladian like this, with the arch tops with the doors. It was a side hall. It had 2 rooms down and 2 rooms up, as you can see in this. But everything inside was intact, original, just like it was when it was built. This is on the corner of Road and Fearing Street. This is Dr. Butt's drugstore, and it was the only New Orleans style building in Elizabeth City. It was made of brick and housed a wrought iron balcony. Now, all this up here was wood, but this part down here was all wrought iron brackets and columns. It was torn down in the 70s, about the same time they tore down the Blades house and Dr. Combs' house. The Methodist Church tore this down for more parking. The Methodist Church had used it for years as a Boy Scout hut and all kinds of other stuff, but they figured it was too much upkeep and it was better to have parking lot. Carrie Lee was next door. That's what you're thinking. This is the corner of Main and Water Street. This is Main right here, and this is Water Street, and you're looking towards the Camden Bridge. The building right here is what was known as the Star Hotel, and this is where the Wright brothers stayed when they came to go to the Outer Banks. They stayed here. They went across the street to the Fowler store, bought canvas and all kinds of stuff, got on the Trenton. Right here, there was a wharf and a dock. They got on the Trenton and the Van Skyver. 2 different times they went and took all their stuff to the Outer Banks. There's a plaque, I think, there that commemorates this. That's my cursor. Hold on. Taft Airplane Company. I don't know. I don't know if any of you in here know. Harry John may know. This was a flying boat Kingfisher. The Kingfisher. That's exactly right. Taft Airplane Company in the 20s and 30s were built here in Elizabeth City. And this is one of their boats. Of course, there's no way to land it other than in water because it had a boat hold base, single engine plane. This is the Carolinian. This is one of Miles Clark's tankers. This is the first all welded ship hull in the world. It was the first all welded steel hull ever done, and it was done here in Elizabeth City for Miles Clark for the Carolinian. James Adams Floating Theater. We touched on this. I don't need that. I know my fingers are too big and I'm in the dark. I'm trying to enlarge it. Let's see. Okay, James Adams Floating Theater was a partly only entertainment we had in Elizabeth City at the time. And it started out in Baltimore and it made its run down the intercoastal waterway. And it started its season in Elizabeth City at the foot of Fearing Street. It always sank in the canal coming down from Norfolk. It would hit a snag and sank, and they'd have to go and pump it out and bring it here and set it up. Edna Ferber, who wrote the book Showboat, came in 1925 and spent 3 weeks on the James Adams Floating Theater to get information for writing her book Showboat, which became bestseller and which became a Broadway show and a movie. And it got its start in Elizabeth City.
What year is that?
What year was she here? In 25. This ran until the 1930s. Depression killed a lot of this stuff.
Didn't it cut canal built down?
Oh yeah, George Washington cut that, surveyed it, and did it in 1700s.
Not the Dismal, I'm talking about the Virginia cut, the other one.
Uh,
I'm wondering how that got down there.
It got down the Dismal Swamp Canal.
Did it?
Yes. It was a lot deeper. Yeah. Yep. Here's the interior of it. You'll notice the pressed tin ceiling. Very small stage, but it seated a lot of people. Good friend of mine, Frank Benton, who is no longer with us, always told the story of working on the Showboat, and his job was to play the drums in the pit orchestra and heavily salt the popcorn during intermission so people would buy more Coca-Colas. And here it is, after it's hit a snag in the canal, and they would send the shipyard tugs to pump it out, patch the hole, bring it back to Elizabeth City, fix it, and send it on its way. McCabe and Grice building. This building is still there and still looks pretty much like it does in this photograph, although it went through some horrible changes. This is on the corner of Main and Poindexter Street. And as I told you before, there's now a gymnasium down here and apartments up here. It's right across from AOA, and you'll notice here's the Virginia Dare Hotel in the background. In the 1950s, after it was McCabe and Grice, it became Rucker and Shealy. And they remodeled it by putting a pink enameled front on it that covered up the entire front, covered up the windows all the way to the cornice. They took off all these decorative things at the top and removed all that. This is all still there. They just built a cornice out, but it had a pink facade and no windows. They didn't mess with the side, but they did do the front. And then they remodeled, tore all these windows out and made it all modern and new. It was remodeled or taken back like it was probably, I can't remember exactly, but it was sometime in the 90s that was redone into the way it is now, which is almost identical to what it was originally. Right here in the front is a stained glass window. I think it's still in there that says McCabe and Grice. This is the J.C. Allen home on the corner of Airing House and Road Street. This house was built about 1820, and it was the girls' club for many years. It's now I can't think, Park and Save, I think is the name of the gas station that's there. It was torn down about the same time urban renewal projects started, and they widened Eringhouse Street. So it's probably this is probably now one lane of Eringhouse Street that in that direction. One of my favorite places in Elizabeth City, and those of you who are familiar with Elizabeth City will know this. This is the Duke Inn. This house no longer exists, but it was where G.R. Little Insurance Agency is on Church Street. Miss Mamie Duke ran a boarding house, so to speak. And they always said anytime Miss Mamie Duke got money, she would add on. She added on so many times that she connected the house that was next door to it with her house. With this breezeway sort of thing, she added dormer windows at the top and rooms. The story goes that she had a fire in it at the back one night, and the fire department went to put it out, and the fireman that was up in the back of the house to put out the fire couldn't get out. He couldn't figure out how to get out of the house. The only way he could get out was to follow the hose back, because it was such a rat warren. But it was a neat place, and it covered almost that entire block. All right, we right now are sitting right here. There's the Episcopal Cemetery right there. This is Robinson Cleaners, and this is what was known as the Gospel Gap. All of this is now parking lot. Over here in this area here is the fish market, or what is it? Quality Seafood. Yeah, yeah. All this was torn down in the 60s for urban renewal, and Eringhouse Street was widened. This is the hotel on the corner of Water and Colonial Avenue after the fire. Most of these buildings were wooden, and wood is not a good thing to have as a building material when you have wood stoves and wood-fired heating systems. And a lot of them burned many times. This one burned probably about 1868, 1870, and then they replaced this entire front when they remodeled a building. They didn't tear them down, they would fix them. This is all now cast iron. And the building is still there, and you can go and see the front of the building, and there's a plaque down here in the corner that tells you about the cast iron company that put the front on the building. Here's a close-up of the front of it. It had a balcony on it, which is no longer there. This is after the fire. This is the corner of Poindexter and Fearing Street, and this was originally a bank. And if you'll notice, the building is still there, but this part is gone. The hurricane of 1933 took that spire off of the building, and then they just redid the roof in another configuration. When I was a child, my grandfather had a meat market in the bottom part of this. But before that, it had been Citizens Bank. The building is still there, and I think it's up for sale now. So if any of you all are interested in something historical, go buy that and do something with it. Griffin's Bicycle Shop is where oh Lord, Jan Mills' place. What is it? I can't think. Brain just went dead. Hoppin' John's on Colonial Avenue. I think there's another picture of the interior of it. And here's the interior of it, about 1930. A lot of businesses here in town. Dare Lumber Company, one of the largest lumber mills in eastern North Carolina. It's now the site of the sewage treatment plant. For years, it was abandoned. When I was a child, it was abandoned, and we used to go play in it. Of course, we weren't supposed to. It's one that didn't get killed. But it was really neat. It's a huge complex. But they took it, the city took it and made a sewage treatment plant out of it. The courthouse before the wings were added. Love these old colorized postcards. They're really neat. There's another picture of it before the wings were added. And an earlier one. And this one you can see, if I can zoom out, you can see the Derrickson Hollowell house here, which is still there on that corner. and Ms. Bright's house back here behind it, which is no longer there. This is part of the library complex. That's usually me with the phone call. Here's my cursor. Main Street, about 1945, looking eastward. The Carolina building on the left, the YMCA on the right, and the Belk Tyler building on the right. These are no longer here, and this one is no longer here. But most of the buildings down in this block are still there. Woolworths was in one and McClellan's was in the other. And there's a post office from the same time. And this is when they had added the annex on the back of this. Post office again in the 20s. It hasn't changed much at all other than plant growth. This is the passenger station for the Norfolk Southern Railroad. This is in front of Roanoke Bible College, or MACU as it's called now. And as I had told you before, the train came in forward and had to back out because there was no way to get back on the main line. So after about 1930 some, they just stopped having passenger service here and had it out at the train station out on 17. This is the oldest house supposedly in Elizabeth City. This is my family's home on the corner of Church and Fearing Street. House was supposedly built in 1790, and it was originally a one-room deep, two-story house with no porch. It saw many, many, many additions. My great-grandmother had a boarding house here, and several of the rooms upstairs and to the left and to the right were used for boarders. The building on the part on the left, now that my family collects and has collected for years, this tale I'm going to tell you will show you why. When they built Dr. Peters' house over here, and it was actually the pool house, there was a one room, one story building on the property that they were going to tear down. So my great grandmother decided she wasn't going to let them tear it down. So they got mules and logs and they rolled it over and attached it to that side of the house. And it's still there. And it's actually, they think it is actually older than that house. They think at least by 10 or 20 years. But it still has wide plank floors in it, a little tiny mantel. The doors are only 5.5 foot tall to get in. I busted my head many times in that place. This is the J.B. Fearing home on Riverside. Remember, I showed you in the first picture the farmland that was turned into the cabbage patch and all the housing over there. This is the main house. This house is still there, but it does not look like that now. It has 4 big columns, stone columns in the front, and it's now brick. In the 50s, they tore down the DePaul Hospital in Norfolk, and my cousin Tinker Marset bought the columns off of it, brought them down the river in a barge, remodeled a house, bricked it over, and put the columns in front of it. And then that's the way it looks today. C.M. Jones Hardware. This is the corner of, this is Colonial Avenue going this way. Poindexter Street this way and Colonial Avenue this way. The building is still there. It actually became Heilig Myers Thornton Furniture Company over the years, and it's now apartments, but the building is still there. It's right across from the mills. The Inez, Elizabeth City's first fire engine, that is actually here at the museum. When I was a child and the fire department was over on Elizabeth Street, it sat on a concrete pad outside the fire department for years, and we used to go and play on it. I don't know why it didn't destroy it. Then they gave it to the museum. The museum took it out to 17 when they were out there, and it sat outside for a while. I think it's inside now, and there are plans to restore it and put it back in display. This is really wild. This is the Pasquotank Highway Commission is what is written on the side of that truck, whatever that thing is with the big tires. This is a country road, which is now US 17. And this is back in the 20s when they were surveying and grading. Behind this thing, you'll see this weird contraption, and it's actually a grader where they're grading the road to make a highway, a 2-lane highway, actually. I don't think they had numbers at the time. I think it was just part of the highway system. Elizabeth City Cotton Mills. And we have one of the former owners here with us. I don't like to say that. The great thing about this is it's going to be converted into 100 luxury apartments. The people that have done it or have bought it actually have done the old Jefferson Hotel in Richmond, and it is 5-star. And they are planning to have this completed by next December. But you can sit, I mean, it's all basically still there. The houses back here are gone. A lot of these mill houses over here are no longer, but there's still some of them that are still there. It's out on 17, right at almost at the foot of Elizabeth Street. If you go down Elizabeth Street to 17, it'll be the big brick building over on the right. Water tower is still there, and actually all these rows of windows are still in the building. And the guy that I talked to him, and he is planning to take the brick away from the windows, restore the windows back to original. So all those apartments will have 14-foot windows in them. Harry John, where was the seamless plant? I can't remember. The seamless plant, was that in the back of it? Okay, down further, Perry Glass. Yeah. Avalon Mills, that's right. A group out of Richmond, Virginia, and they buy old buildings and restore them. The man that bought it originally from the Robinsons actually had been the one that did the old high school and the Wedler Candy Company, and he had bought 2 more in the interim and decided that it was easier for him to work on the other 2 as opposed to this one because it was so much of a big project that he didn't want to start at that point in time. So he had friends that were in the business that were really good and were going very historically correct. He walked me through it and told me that there were places in the floor that had been replaced, and he said that they would leave those places and just sand them so that the character and the history would still be part of the building. I hope this is not this weekend. 1980, we had the largest snows of anybody in the United States, so much so that Walter Cronkite gave us the Golden Snow Shovel Award. We had 27 inches the first time, and 4 weeks later, we had 32 inches. So all you people from up north can take that stuff and carry it back with you. We don't like it. Actually, you can see this is actually across the street from where I grew up, and the cars were buried. We were without, we'd had power, thank God, but we were without transportation for a long time. The only thing we could get was radio, and the people on the radio were asking for 4-wheel drives to take the doctors and the nurses to the hospital, and very few people had 4-wheel drive vehicles in 1980. This is the first year I started teaching school, and I taught at Central, and they forgot to turn the boiler off, and the pipes froze and broke, and the boiler broke. And so we didn't have school for 2 months. Everybody else did, but we didn't. And we got grandfathered in, and they said it was an act of God, and we didn't have to make it up. So I was very happy. There again, this is 1980. No snow plows, no nothing. The first snow was just a heavy snow. The second one was actually a blizzard, and there were drifts up to 12 feet high. All right, I hit the wrong thing again. Okay. The circus came to town, and the circus actually would come down Main Street. In the background is the Flora Robinson house. So give you some idea where it was. Monkeys in a cage. Now that's always a good thing to go down the street. The circus was Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus, and it would set up where on Erringhouse Street. It used to be the A&P, then it was the Haste Hardware. I don't know what it is now. The building's still there. It's right at the foot of Perth Street. But they would always come from the train station out on 17 and have a parade right down the middle of Main Street, elephants and all. Okay. This is Main Street looking east. What's over here where this bush is now is the Robinson House, the Flora Robinson House. I don't think at this time it was built, but the building right here, the house right here, is the original Robinson House, which is where the tax office is now. It was a beautiful Second Empire Victorian home with turrets and arched dormers and all kinds of stained glass and marble mantles and inlaid floors. It was a gorgeous home, and it was used for many years as the county library until they decided that it was not big enough for the library and it had to have too much work done to it. So they tore it down and they built the building that's there now for the library. And now we have a new library, and it's the tax office. But there again, it's a shame that all this historic stuff is being destroyed. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying that the houses that are built nowadays are built as throwaway houses. They are only designed to last about 30 to 40 years. These houses were designed to last through generations.
That was settled up there at one time.
Now, Medical Center was over on the corner of Colonial Avenue and Elliott Street. And the building's still there. And here they are tearing it down. And that's a shame. I mean, you can see how gorgeous it was. But they see that pickup truck? That's me. I wasn't going to let them. I got stuff in the back, and I'm still pulling out stuff. I just can't stand to see this stuff destroyed. And the circus has come back. These pictures are out of order. There you go. Culpeper Motor Company advertising on an elephant. Now that's pretty good. This is the Robinson home after it was first built, and this is the rear view of it. It has been sold, and the people that have bought it are very nice. I've met them. They are planning a complete restoration of it. They want to take it back to like it was when it was built in the early turn of the century. They plan to spend $1 million on it. So that tells you they're really planning to do something good. Here's an interior shot of it. If you've never been in it, it is a gorgeous house inside. It will be a home, yes. The man that bought it, they're from Northern California, and he has 7 children. And he told me that this house in Northern California would be $10 million in the condition it's in. And he said he could not afford, or his children couldn't afford to buy a house in Northern California because everything started at $1 million. So they are moving here, and they're going to move their 7 children as they can find historic houses for them to restore and redo. So they'll be a great addition to Elizabeth City. Another shot of the interior of the Robinson house. It's all I love outside photos, but I also love the interior pictures. There's the statue that was in the front hall. If anybody's ever been in there before, that was one gorgeous statue. That wasn't that a wedding present, Harry, that came from Italy? Well, the statue came on a European tour? Yeah, one of 4 that the sculptor had done. No, it's gone. It was taken out when the house was divided up, when the family closed everything out. There it is again. And it never was moved from that spot, was it, Harry? It was put there and never moved. I don't think you could move it. Flora was wonderful about that. Of course, Fred would worry you to death if you didn't. Yes, she was. That's right. Another picture of the interior. And I have shown the couple that bought this house, I've shown them these pictures, and they are really excited to bring it back to like it was. Dining room. Correct me if I'm wrong, Harry, but wasn't this furniture made for that house, made for that dining room? Yeah,
Who made it?
London.
Wink London. Another picture of the interior. Upstairs bedroom. Yeah, wait. I must have come to the end of the line because it won't go any further. Well, yeah, radiator steam heat. What's funny is the man that bought it has a boiler company and he works on radiators and steam heat, and he is excited to go in there and redo it and put in all this new stuff and redo the radiators, and that's what's fun for him. No. What the family didn't take went to auction. That was mine. I put it all in there when ECDI was in there. Yeah, yeah. But it's still a gorgeous house and will be again, hopefully soon. All right, Miss Laura, I'm at the end of the line. Hi, guys.
Did the roof on? Is that the big White House on the corner?
Yes, yes. Yeah. There's a great deal of interest in renovation here now. There are historic tax credits. They don't do as well for individuals as they do for somebody that wants to rent the building out or turn it into income producing property. If you own it and you want taxes like that, they have a lot of guidelines and they're sticklers for what they're doing. So it really doesn't behoove you to do it. And the tax credits only last for like 5 to 7 years.
The Descartes, would he buy that? It's sold to these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Questions?
Cotton mill, you said are they already started on that?
They've started working on it. Yes, ma'am. Supposedly it's going to be finished by next year this time. I mean, I saw the plans and they're amazing. 100 high-end apartments in it.
Sold now to finish.
In the cotton mill, you mean? I think they're going to be rented. I don't think they're going to be sold. They're not condos. I think they're apartments like the Weatherly and like the high school. But I think people are already signing up for them. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I see a lot of empty houses, like historical houses, and I love history, and a lot of people don't appreciate it. Now, is there like a committee or something that can help save the historical houses, or do they have like petitions, or they can?
That's a good.
Come in and buy them, like the people that bought this house, that have money that want to preserve our history.
The first thing you got to do is find the person that owns it and make them be willing to sell it, which is hard to do because there's several houses in town that are falling in and people are not willing to sell them or have anybody to go in and restore them. So yeah, they just let them sit. But it's not as much as it used to be years ago. People just let everything sit and fall in, and now it's just a few. But I'm on the Historic Preservation Committee and Elizabeth City Historic Neighborhood Association, and we try to save as much as we can and let people be aware of what's going on. Yes, sir.
You're required to maintain the original architecture?
No, we have no guidelines like that here. In the 70s, when Catherine Beischer came and surveyed all these houses, and we became part of the historic stuff in North Carolina and the National Register, we could opt in or opt out. They'd go to your house and they'd say, you can be on the historic register if you want to, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. And they'd say, well, why do I need to be on it? And they'd say, well, it's because it's historic. Well, what happens if I'm on it? Well, if you're on it, you can't change this, that, and the other. And they'd say, oh, no, I don't want my house on it. So if you look at any map of the historic district in Elizabeth City, you will see jut outs and cut throughs where people just decided they didn't want their house in that. But actually, the whole area is historic, but they just bumped it out. They opted out, right? Exactly.
Very much for coming out.
Thank you.